It's Monday, and that so happens to be the day that I like to talk about monsters. I'm Geoff Arbuckle, and this is Monster Mondays, presented to you by Film Seizure. Now, initially, this was meant to be sort of the beginning of a sort of Godzilla and King Kong heavy month, what with the expected release of Godzilla vs. Kong before the end of November. However, this is 2020, and not exactly a friendly year for anyone looking forward to much of anything. Godzilla vs. Kong is now coming out in May of 2021, supposedly, but allow me to not hold my breath for that to actually come to pass. While I have rearranged my Monster Monday schedule, I am pressing on with two of the Godzilla movies I intended to talk about to start the month off anyway. The first one is what we're talking about this week, Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla from 1974. First and foremost, allow me to get this right out of the damn way off the top. I don't care what anyone says, I love this movie. I think this is probably one that I caught on the local TV stations on a Saturday afternoon when they'd play little oddball sort of kid-friendly type of movies when I was really young. For some reason, I always have this belief that Saturday afternoon double and triple features on the local station were always like all Asian movies, either Godzilla or other kaiju flicks or kung fu action movies, something like that. Now, it may be a little bit of a Mandela effect, it may be true, I'm not exactly sure, but whatever it is, I always feel like Saturdays are a wonderful day to watch Godzilla and or kung fu movies. But the year is 1974, the place is Japan, the studio is Toho. You have an international star in Godzilla, but, he's kind of going the way of a washed up, boozing leading man by this point in his career. Most will probably say that the last truly great film in the series was probably 1968's Destroy All Monsters, and afterwards you had Godzilla meeting Gigan in a silly battle. There was that smog monster guy who covers everything in its own feces. There's the bug guy Megalon. He stepped up to the plate to try his hand, only for that whole thing to be laughed out of theaters as well. You even had Godzilla's Revenge, which is widely considered the absolute worst film in the entire series. So things were seemingly on a downturn for Big G, but Godzilla wouldn't be shelved quite yet. Not at all. He maybe wasn't bringing in the numbers he did in the earlier 60s, but he still had some life to him and still had some movies to produce. Now, Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla would do a couple of things. First, I think it sort of starts steering the franchise back to a slightly more mature tone. When Mechagodzilla first appears in the movie, he's got this fake skin over him, kind of making him look a little bit more like the regular Godzilla, and he's on a rampage. He messes up Godzilla's little buddy Anguirus, and it's fairly brutal. In the end, it is still a giant robot fighting a giant lizard guy, but it shows a little more gore, and it makes it kind of look like Big G is the bad guy in the front part of this movie. Now, the second thing it did was introduce a new kind of portmanteau with the whole mecha prefix. Ever since Mechagodzilla, when you see a mechanical or robotic version of something that's a biological creature or thing, you normally call it mecha something. It's a little silly to add mecha to Godzilla to make him Mechagodzilla, but damn it if it doesn't work. Now, Mecha G isn't the only new kaiju introduced to Toho's catalog of monsters in this movie. I've already mentioned that Anguirus has a small supporting role as well, but we meet a mystical creature that protects a village called King Seizure. He joins in on the battle pretty much in the third act of the movie, so Toho was kind of tossing some things at the wall to see what stuck and what didn't. You've got a mechanical kaiju controlled by aliens. You've got a mystical creature that sleeps inside a mountain until someone from the village he protects comes out and sings to him to ask for help. So there's that contrast of the earthy mysticism of legend and lore, as well as the scientifically tangible atomic age monstrosity made up of metal, gears, and circuitry. Now, our movie starts with Anguirus. He's kind of chilling what I thought at first was Monster Island, but it turns out I think he's just kind of hanging out around Mount Fuji. But he witnesses a bright light emanating from the mountain. Then the title comes flying out at you and away from you in an almost strobe-like effect to tell you that, oh hell yeah, Godzilla's gonna fight Mechagodzilla. Now, after the credits, we see a tourist named Masako, and he's watching an Azumi priestess do a performance for some tourists in the little village, but she collapses after having a vision of a terrible monster. Masako then goes to a cave and discovers a strange metal that he takes to a Professor Miyajima for him to look at and study it. Now, Masako's brother Kazuki, he leads an excavation that uncovers an ancient mural with a terrifying prophecy about a black mountain appearing above the clouds. A terrible monster will arrive to destroy the world, but 2 other monsters will arise to save the people. Now, an archaeologist, Seiko, takes an artifact from the site so that she can speak to a Professor Wagura. So we have one brother, Masako, speaking to a metallurgist, I guess, and then you have another brother, Kazuki, working with 2 archaeologists, Seiko and Wagura. You got that? Okay, good. Now, strange earthquakes are happening all over Japan. Now, and what's weird about them is that the epicenter is changing and moving as if something was under the ground, moving around and causing the earthquakes to kind of shift around its starting point. On top of that, there's another organization involved in all this as well. There's these guys in black suits, and they have similar rings on who kind of seem to be interested in what the excavation uncovered. There's also these other guys that are following everybody around, but we'll sort it all out here later. Now, back where Anguirus witnessed the Black Mountain at the beginning of the movie, Godzilla seems to emerge, and he's pretty pissed off. So Anguirus steps up, and he just wants to kind of find out what's got his pal so bummed out, you know? And this doesn't really go so well for our scrappy little quadruped. This supposed Godzilla, which Masako himself says seems to be a bit off because Anguirus wouldn't attack his friend if there wasn't something strange happening. But this Godzilla, he's pretty brutal. He's smashing buildings with more force than usual. Worse, he's tossing Anguirus around and eventually breaks the poor guy's jaw, causing like blood to gush out everywhere. I mean, Anguirus retreats and this Godzilla carries on. However, this new Godzilla skin is kind of flaking off and it's revealing something shiny. Masako finds more of that strange metal that Miyajima says is space titanium. Now, meanwhile, this really angry Godzilla with strange atomic breath is kind of rampaging something terrible, right? But then a second Godzilla appears. So what gives? Well, meanwhile, some people in a futuristic Jon Pertwee era Doctor Who-like set is watching the battle with glee and some bad skin conditions. Now, these guys are aliens who give up the ruse and reveal Mechagodzilla just as Godzilla was realizing that there's something strange about that fella over there that looks an awful lot like he does. When Mechagodzilla is revealed, you get this rockin' soundtrack that zooms in on the various features of the mechanical beast. Mechagodzilla has missile fingers, laser eyes, a nose that looks like 2 little machine gun turrets, and a bitchin' MG emblem on his arm. Godzilla gets injured and falls into the bay while bleeding profusely, but he at least is able to damage Mechagodzilla's mechanical brain bits. The aliens need to repair MG, but our scientists figure out that the artifact explains where they can find King Seizure to bring him into the battle to help Godzilla, as well as Mechagodzilla being an advanced alien cyborg. Miyajima goes to the cave with his daughter and Masako. However, the aliens are there and capture them to force Miyajima to help in the repair of Mechagodzilla. Kazuki and Seiko are attacked by someone trying to steal the artifact of King Seizure. The attacker is injured, revealing that he's one of the aliens that is kind of controlling Mechagodzilla, and he's got ape-like features under the fake human skin that he's wearing. Kazuki eventually is met by a sort of guardian angel in the form of an Interpol agent named Nenbara. And Interpol's been tracking the aliens, and he helps Kazuki infiltrate the alien compound to save his brother, Professor Miyajima, and the professor's daughter. Kazuki and Seiko go to the Azumi to wake King Caesar up and basically to bring him into the fight against Mechagodzilla, while Nanbara, Masako, and Miyajima go to the alien hideout to stop the aliens' plan. Now, you got all this? I'm not going to repeat it, but there will be a test after this, so hang on there. The Azumi priestess sings to King Caesar at the appropriate time in the prophecy, and he busts out of his mountain to battle Mecha-G with rainbow eye lasers. He's a pretty cool looking guy. Like, King Caesar doesn't really do too badly on his own at first, but eventually he does need Godzilla to show up to help lay that smack down. Godzilla rises up from the water, and the aliens give MG the order to beat Godzilla to death. Not laser or missile him to death, beat him to death. MG shows that he can turn his head backwards and fight King Caesar with lasers while shooting missiles forward at Godzilla. He can also whip his head around Linda Blair style, but if he does it fast enough, it creates a force field to protect him from the two Earth monsters. Soon, he's unleashing everything in his arsenal against the two heroes. It takes Godzilla turning himself into a giant magnet to keep the metal monster close enough for Godzilla to rip its head off. Our heroes in the alien compound put to rest the final plans of the aliens and escape before the place explodes. Godzilla high-fives King Caesar, says he owes him a beer, lets that doggo go back to his mountain to sleep, and heads off into the water to fight another day. So let's get to my three things I love about Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla. First, these aliens. Okay, it's a little bit of a Planet of the Apes knockoff, just as a Japanese series later called Time of the Apes was also a ripoff of Planet of the Apes. But the one guy who Kazuki fought has that cool image of his skin tearing off his face and then revealing part of that ape face of his, and that's pretty cool. However, these aliens are never given actual species names. Their leader is individually named Koronuma, but his race is not. They are just said to have come from the third planet of the black hole. Now, I love how that name makes no sense whatsoever. I mean, do they not know how black holes work? I mean, I suppose they didn't really care because that third planet of the black hole does sound pretty neat, but whatever, I love it. I also love that this era's version of Mechagodzilla was the only time the mechanical monster was actually controlled by aliens, but we'll talk more about that here in just a moment. While this movie does use the tired plot idea of aliens controlling an evil monster, or the evil monster being from outer space, Ghidorah and Gigan were also alien creatures used heavily just before this film. I think that the villainous black hole aliens, I guess we'll call them, are actually somewhat menacing and maybe even a little scary for little kids watching the movie. I commented earlier that the aliens seem to live or operate out of a set that comes straight out of the 70s era of Doctor Who, but combining that with the cave setting, and I really do get a strong 70s Who vibe. I doubt it really inspired the look of this movie, or the feel of it, or the heavy sci-fi slant, but it proves that younger audiences definitely gravitate towards some of these ideas. I think there's a brisk pace to this movie too that doesn't bog down with the humans going up against the aliens. It just works for me on several layers. It's no wonder that this is my favorite film of all the Godzilla movies. Oh, wait a minute. What did I just say? This is my absolute favorite Godzilla film of them all? Hell yeah, it is. First and foremost, it features my three favorite kaiju of all, and all of them all in this one film. You got Godzilla, you got Anguirus, and freaking Mechagodzilla himself. King Caesar is nothing to sneeze at either. I love his more Chinese mythology design of the creature being dog-like in his features, but Mechagodzilla, and more specifically this original Mechagodzilla, is just boss. They really outdid themselves at Toho this time around. You've got this giant robot fighting a giant lizard. The giant robot is modeled after Godzilla himself, too. He's designed to basically be a match for Big G, and he's so cool in how they reveal him, and it's just amazing. However, he's not just a match for Godzilla, he's a match for both Godzilla and King Caesar. The two monsters, try to fight Mechagodzilla, but the mechanical beast can twist sections of his body and head to fight in more than one direction at a time with lasers and stuff. I mean, when he starts kicking Godzilla's butt, he makes the big G bleed and even spouts blood like a spigot from his neck after taking a laser blast in the throat. I mean, it's great. I get giddy whenever I see the original Mechagodzilla. And this original Mechagodzilla is the only time that the origins of the creature is alien-based. In future movies of the Heisei and Millennium series, Mecha G is a human creation. Sometimes it's built as a giant piloted mech suit. Sometimes it is built around the skeleton of the original Godzilla killed in the 1954 movie. Either which way, something usually happens to cause Mecha G to basically go nuts and start rampaging on its own without human control. I also think this original MG is a little bit more menacing looking. Plus, he gets his goddamn head ripped off in consecutive movies, and it only kills the monster one of the 2 times Godzilla goes for the kill. And that's pretty badass. Now that wraps up this week's Monster Mondays. Don't forget to check out new episodes of Film Seizure every Wednesday and a new installment of Monster Mondays each Monday on filmseizure.com, as well as places where fine podcasts are found like SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and Spotify. Additionally, hop on over to Facebook and Twitter to follow us by just searching for Film Seizure. You can also check out new posts on my website, bmovieenema.com, each and every Friday. So, until next week, stay spooky.